Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead, and today I want to talk to you about Goonhammer. On the off chance you don't know what Goonhammer is, they are primarily a Warhammer 40,000 article, blog, conglomerate of hobbyists that focus almost exclusively on Warhammer 40,000 and very heavily on the competitive scene. They don't want me to say that, I'm sure. They want me to say that they focus on a lot of different Games Workshop and other hobby games. I know they cover Mantic, Magic the Gathering, probably other things too. That's all that pops off the top of my head though. And recently they did a reader survey. If you don't know, they do killteam content as well. If you want written word content, they're pretty much the premier place to go. It's just kind of them, and then Can You Roll a Crit? Those are, if you want written content for Kill Team, it's just those two websites. They recently did a poll, and I want to discuss the results of their poll because I think they're pretty interesting, even if they're not necessarily directly related to Kill Team, and they are more 40k, but hey, stats, they're pretty interesting, especially when it's like generic things like favourite factions, most played and interested games, etc. So let's dive into some things. But of course, first, if you're already subscribed to my channel, I'd like to give you a big double hello. Wow. It never ceases to amaze me, the wholesomeness of the pirate treasure finding sound. If you want a double hello in the next video, like, subscribe, leave a comment right now. Let's get into it. Guys, this is actually a very long article. I highly recommend that you go and read it yourself. It's on Goonhammer. Just type Goonhammer. You see the title of it there, you go find it. I'm going to skip to the interesting bits because I think they're funky. I should probably zoom in, shouldn't I? Let's zoom in for you. Here we go. Let's zoom out. Okay, there we are. This is kind of the first little graph they show us. The 40k content they do, they're 79, there were 3,000 responses, sorry, over 3,000 responses, of which 79% of the respondees play 40k. 34%, which is the next largest number, play Kill Team, 27% play Age of Sigmar, and 22% play Magic. Those first four numbers are the important ones. Let's have a little talk about that. 40k being top, 100% makes sense. Yes, cool. Kill Team being second is very cool for Kill Team, obviously. We have to obviously understand a slight bias in there. Yeah, in the people that are firstly reading their content and visiting their site on a regular basis enough to see this. I will admit that, so I read Goonhammer relatively regularly, but I missed this, and I don't know how, but I just completely missed that they were doing a survey. So, you know, not everybody is a die-hard Goonhammer responder. The people that do see it and want to respond are, of course, going to be presumably a more faithful niche. So we could almost argue that this isn't their total viewers, this is which of their audience is the most engaged. 40k players. I would say that's probably a better way of viewing this. And so therefore, of the people that read Goonhammer that are engaged with that content, the second game they play is Kill Team. Now, that makes a lot of sense. But we then have to look at the fact that Magic is fourth. And that's where we start to consider, you know, maybe we need to reconsider exactly what this means, right? It means that most people that come to the Goonhammer site, their bias is they play 40k, because that is how Goonhammer cuts their teeth. That's where they began, that's everything. Kill Team obviously makes sense as being the second most played game because it is very strongly, closely related to 40k, and, as mentioned, Goonhammer is one of the few places that are doing written content for Kill Team. Therefore, they probably have the largest base of Kill Teamers that want to read stuff. Cool. And we then have to see that Age of Sigmar is at third. Magic, if we actually sat down, if you just took a whole huge, you know, questionnaire of the entire world, Magic's going to be the first, right? Probably by a very long margin. Then probably 40k. And then where everything else sits, very hard to know. I suspect that Age of Sigmar does have more players than Kill Team. Very hard to say. But you know what? A lot of people that play 40k probably have a Kill Team in their army, and so they have a passing interest. Whereas to have a passing interest in Age of Sigmar from being a 40k player, you would of course have to buy a whole other army. Awesome. So that's pretty interesting. I like that stat. Let's keep going because I have more interesting things to talk about. This is an interesting one. So they rate hobbyist. The majority of their viewers are hobbyists. Now that's interesting to me because the way that I connect with Goonhammer is I see them posting their articles on r/Warhammer Competitive. And when I look at them, I see mainly their tournament reviews, their lessons learned, their meta watches. I think that's their best content. But the majority of people that go and read their stuff are still hobbyists, which I find very strange, actually. To the point that casual is the second, and then competitive, then very, very closely narrative, followed by community. I'm not 100% sure what community means. But yeah, I find that one interesting. I'm not going to dwell on that one too long. But I would have thought, because of the content they produce, competitive would be much, much higher. But I think that's fascinating. As a fellow content creator, the fact that a competitive focused website still has more hobbyists than competitive players or casual players or narrative players is quite the insight. And as I said in my last video, it's really a testament to the fact that Warhammer 40,000, you know, like, say what you will about it, people love to think about it. And I think that's really cool. They back up what I said. Most people come to them for competitive content, and then second, hobby content. Yet, the vast majority of them, of players, admit, whilst they come to Goonhammer for competitive content, they are, first and foremost, hobbyists. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's power through, because this is the final thing I want to look at, because this is the thing. I love faction data. More than anything, I love faction data, because I'm always thinking, what faction should I get? Like, so as a player, I'm a total hipster. For example, Tau, super cool faction, I think. Having now seen the new Tau Codex, wow, they're broken. I can't play Tau until they get nerfed. Right? You know, that's me. That's me. I hate that I'm that person, because I know that one day I'm going to want to compete, and then I'm going to have to be a meta chaser, which means I do have to play the best armies, which bleh, whatever. But I love looking at this stuff because it says a lot. So let's have a look. So the way this is set out is the top bar in each column, in each row, sorry, is an army that they own. Doesn't mean they play it, they just own it. And then the lower bar in each row means it is their main army. To nobody's surprise at all, Adept Societies are not only they are far and away the most owned, but they are also the most people's primary army, which I think is not necessarily what I would have guessed. I suppose, okay, so one thing they have done in this, which I will mention, is that for both Adept Societies and Chaos Space Marines, which are the second most owned and played armies, they've wrapped everything up. So Adept Societies are all the sub-factions. They're Blood Angels, Space Wolves, blah, blah, blah. And Chaos Space Marines are, let me just quickly double check so I'm not saying something silly. Yes. They are not just Chaos Space Marines, not just Heretic Astartes, but they are also Death Guard and Thousand Suns. Very interesting. So I think if you were to shake those two factions out, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, I suspect the standard Heretic Astartes would drop quite significantly. but that's what they've done, so it's fine. Yeah, so, I suppose the only thing I would say that is interesting about the Adept Societies there is that I'm surprised, again, because considering how much of their content that I associate with is being competitive, I would have thought that they would have their readers would have skewed to being more varied away from the beginner faction. But again, as we're seeing from their polls here, most people, despite why they come to the site, are primarily hobbyists and then primarily casual players. And what do casual players play? Space Marines. That's the stereotype, and it's true even in a very heavily competitively focused website, which I think's fascinating. We then go to Space Marines, which I already said is split into, so all three of them are combined. Now, I'm actually really shocked by this. Even with, I guess what's pulling these stats up would be Death Guard, because the owned is crazy high, super high. I have to assume that's because a lot of Goonhammer's readers are around since 8th edition, where the faction that went alongside Space Marines in the starter box, I think Dark Imperium, was Death Guard. And a lot of people apparently are holding on to that. We then have, completely unsurprisingly, given that stat, Necrons. Why Necrons? Because obviously, Necrons are the current alternative faction in all the starter sets. So most people accidentally are going to end up with some Necrons. And then we have, is it Orcs? No. Yes, it is, sorry. We then have Orcs, and then Custodes, and then Sororitas. I'm surprised by Sororitas. Custodes I totally get, because they're a tiny faction. Everyone can afford to go out and pick up like 10 units, right? It's like, yeah, okay, I can go and paint 20 models. That's enough. Sororitas, from what I have seen, they don't get a lot of love on the internet. For example, in my own, what's it called? I did two videos. In Chownath, I did a Tau Pathfinder video and I did a Novitiates video. And the reason I did that as separate videos is because I love the faction data and I really wanted to know which was going to perform better. And Tau performed twice as well as Novitiates. Whatever the number was, but like since after about 2 hours of both videos being up, they have stayed at that ratio. Tau are twice as viewed as Novitiates, whereas here we see that actually they are shockingly similar in the number of people that own the armies and the number of people that main that army. Super interesting for me. I would not have guessed that at all from my own very limited video. To give you as obviously these are small sample sizes. I think my Tau Pathfinder video has gotten like 12,000 views and my Novitiates video has gotten 6,000 views. And here they have had 2,300 responses. So, I'm sure neither side is truly accurate, but these are just indications and interesting stats to think about. I will say big shout out to Chaos Knights, who are the lowest primary faction there, followed by Harlequins, then Imperial Knights, and then Demons. Although, interestingly, a lot of people, compared to how many play them, own all of those factions, apart from Chaos Knights, who are truly the losers in this. And that's it. There you go. I'm going to be honest, I really only wanted to talk about the faction data because I think that's really interesting. I just love to look at the faction data because I'm always thinking, what faction should I play? And, hey, it's only a sample size of 2,300, but that's enough for me, I feel. Pretty interesting. So I guess the question to you is, from looking at this faction focus questionnaire guide right here, what stands out to you? Are there any that have like really confused you? Or are you like, oh, actually, I would have thought that orcs would be much, much higher? or craft worlds would be much, much higher. Certainly, I will admit, Tyranids and Orcs are lower than I expected. And again, from my own research, from my own observations, I would have thought that Tau would be higher as well. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching to the end of the video. And if you have watched the end of the video, I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow. The wholesomeness never ends in the land of weird turtleneck sweater things. Anyway, I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.